Hello, this is the last assessment criteria for assignment 502, and this is assessment criteria 3.3. So this little video will look at 3.3, which is part of task 3B. So task 3B, discuss methods used to monitor and manage individual and team performance. 3.3, analyze motivational techniques used to create high-performing teams. So this one is going to be looking at motivation, and we need to analyze these motivational techniques. So we need to break them down into their parts, look at each part in detail, identify the main issues, and show how the main ideas are related to practice and why they're important. Reference to current theory or research may support the analysis. So I have a little bit of theory here and a little bit of research that I'm just going to put forward. I think that to answer this one really well, it'd be really good to bring in experience. So where you have seen um, leaders or used yourself approaches to motivate a team. What did you do and how effective was it? So it's about kind of talking through the method, but then, to analyze it. I actually think, what the CMI are often after, is more evaluation here actually. So it's again, if you're putting forward ideas about motivation, then looking at the strengths and weaknesses of these ideas. And I know that that's evaluation rather than analyze, but that will ultimately hit the objective. So looking at the techniques that you've used or observed, the pros and cons, the strengths and weaknesses, a bit of a discussion about how effective they are would be really good as a way of answering this assessment criteria. Right, a little bit of theory on motivation. There are lots of theories on motivation. One of the most well known is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Interesting little fact for you. Maslow himself, Abraham Maslow, who did a lot of stuff on, kind of living your best life really in the 40s and 50s. He never actually articulated this as a triangle. That's something that, management types like myself have kind of done over the years, really. He was really all about self-actualization. How do you how do you live your full potential? That was his sort of core idea, really. This whole triangle business is a more recent sort of interpretation of his work. But the idea and certainly, and again, I don't know if Maslow has exactly meant it to be this way, but anyway, let's go with it. That you kind of need the hierarchy of needs is that for people to be, if you like, happy, engaged, and motivated, and I suppose feeling safe, there's a sort of a set of needs that need to be met in order. So physiological needs, yeah, air. Well, that's a given. So food and shelter and all that sort of stuff. It's almost like if you haven't got a roof over your head, or something to eat, if you're hungry, it's almost impossible to think about anything else. It's why schools just need to give kids lunch, don't they? Because also, what on earth is the point of being there if you've got children who aren't having a decent diet and that sort of thing? So this is physiological needs, that these need to be met first for the other needs to be relevant. Safety needs, um, so personal security and so employment, that you can pay your bills, that you're going to be essentially remunerated, that you have job security, that type of thing. That comes next. And again, yeah, it's like when organizations say, oh, we're going to do a restructure, there's going to be redundancies. Almost anything else becomes a little bit irrelevant. Love and belonging, the next level, yeah, so that's relatedness. It's feeling that we're accepted, that we're part of our group. That's huge for people, really. Next is esteem, and I think that's that you feel you have your status recognized, that you're valued by colleagues, and that your contributions are recognized, that you're working at a level that's appropriate to your qualification, your experience, that you feel that others recognize the value that you bring. And then ultimately the top one there, self-actualization. That's I actually see that as being where the recognition of others isn't really any important anymore. So self-actualization is where you're able to give that to yourself. It's sort of like I can self-validate. I know that I'm leading, I'm fully working to my potential. I'm doing work that's meaningful to me, and that's enough. So self-actualization, living your best life. and ultimately, yeah, but living your ideal self. There's something around, I think, being able to really live your values, self-actualization. But of course, that is only going to be, if you like, an important need once the other needs are met. So this is the hierarchy of needs idea that we need to kind of start from the bottom and work our way up. And if one of these kind of key needs lower down isn't met, then the higher ones become a bit irrelevant. They're not so important. I actually, to direct experience of this, I used to do quite a lot of work in Afghanistan, and I remember it was a lot of reconstruction work, and the DFID types, these guys would fly in with their fancy baseball caps, and they would want to do things like with these communities that basically, people living in rubble essentially, and they'd want to give them education and that sort of. They would often like, should we build a school and that sort of thing. Actually, when you speak to the local people who are living in these communities, they just wanted not to have any bombs dropped on them, frankly. So they just wanted to be to know that they had a little bit of security and that they weren't going to get shot or blown up. So education was a long way away from their priorities. Once there was a little bit of stability, what you'd find that they then would start to turn their minds to is things like irrigation, water, access to water, and that sort of thing, so that they could farm, which I guess means that they could earn a living and sort of provide and that sort of thing. Again, still a long way from education. What always interested me about that was, again, when the government types would come in with quite highfalutin ideas, but actually, what people fundamentally needed was the essentials of life. These more highfalutin ideas like schools and whatnot they just didn't feature, not really relevant to people who are living in bombed out buildings. So I think there's definitely something to this. And so again, what we could say again, thinking about team motivation, that our strategy here is just making sure that as far as we possibly can, that before we start worrying too much about people doing work that's fully meaningful and all that sort of stuff, it's making sure that they have the security that they need, that people are paid fairly for what they do, that type of thing, that they're safe in their roles. That's those are going to be, if like, key considerations to get in place first. So yeah. So aligned, yeah, okay, yeah, aligned to that. So here's an interesting one. So about motivation. So agile, the whole agile methodology. This, I think, definitely speaks to those higher level needs. So if you've ever worked in an agile organization, one of the things that's quite interesting about that is there's a real focus on autonomy. So teams being given control of their work, they're allowed to make their own decisions. They're encouraged to be really creative, and they're given space to do that. So like Google gives its employees a certain proportion of time to work on their own projects, things that interest them, because that's often where the most creative ideas come from. They tend to be self-organizing, and they avoid hierarchy. So the management approach tends to be way more around coaching, mentoring, developing, rather than telling people what to do. Because when you tell people what to do, you suppress their creativity. So in technology organizations where creativity is very important, there's this real focus on, you know, allowing teams the space and freedom, I guess, to self-actualize, to kind of work in ways that fully suit them, and without putting in direction, that sort of avoiding any kind of autocratic directive approach, because that will just suppress people's creative best. So you can't really self-actualize if someone's bossing you around and telling you what to do. So it's interesting how this, yeah, I just think it's interesting. Anyway, this agile methodology is, if you like, a kind of a way of, so it's used in a lot in software development and that sort of thing, but actually what it really is more of philosophy for managing in a hands-off way, so that you can let your team, your developers, be as creative as possible, and yeah, ultimately self-actualize. So there we go. How about that? This is another concept which I came across. I actually pinched this from a conference, so just reference. I can't, and so I haven't got a direct reference for this. So by all means, perhaps just reference this this presentation. The talk was being given by somebody from Corn Ferry, so that's the best that I can do. And this was about what motivates and engages the millennial workforce. So that was their research. And okay, inspiration and values. So the reputation, values, behaviors, quality of leadership and really great communication. This is a little bit like, so Patagonia, for example, super focused on eco, and because of its values, and it really lives those values and the sort of strength of brand, a lot of people want to go and work for Patagonia. Volkswagen, conversely, after Dieselgate and all of that, much harder job to recruit people in. So this is again from a millennial perspective. So born 1980 to 2000, the kind of values and of the organization very important. Quality of work, so the perception that the work is going to be challenging, interesting, valuable, and meaningful, so that people are going to be doing great work, that they're going to have good relationships, and also, there we go, look, freedom and autonomy. So quality of work, so people are going to believe that they're going to be doing interesting and meaningful work, hugely important to keep them motivated. 3, the enabling environment. So yeah, this is that you've got the equipment that you need, that you're supported, that you've got tools and systems, that you're trained, and that you are physically safe in your working environment, which, in something like manufacturing and that sort of thing is, serious consideration. So enabling environment, that you're working in a well-organized, well-supported space with the right resources. 4, tangible reward, competitive pay, that you're incentivized, paid fairly, recognized for what you do. Interesting thing about motivation is that when people are given bonuses and that sort of thing, those only tend to increase motivation for a very short period of time. So if people are paid a little bit more than they're expecting, you get a very short-term boost in motivation. However, if people perceive that they're paid less than they should be, that's very demotivating. So it's the thing about competitive, fair, benchmarked pay, I guess, is the thing. Work-life balance. This is, again, a kind of an emerging thing, I think also important for Gen Z as well, that it's supportive, that people, it's their need to recognize that they have flexibility, a kind of balance, I suppose. So that they're able to have balance in their lives, and they're not just expected to be online working, 100 hours a week. So, yeah, so work-life balance and that type of thing is more important for the millennial workforce, arguably, than it has been for previous generations. Question mark? I don't know what you think about that. But anyway, that was one of the findings that Corn Ferry came up with, which I thought was worth thinking about. So yeah, one thing about, again, motivating people is that thing about, how do we support flexibility? And then the last one there, future growth and opportunity, learning beyond the current job, advancement, performance improvement and feedback, so that people are coached, developed, and that they're set up their future career. So it's not just about training for today's job, it's development for the future. So are we developing the team as well as just getting work done? So there we go. I think this is quite good. And again, you can give a view on this about what you think about that, and perhaps how in terms of the team that you're part of, which of these components do you think are important? Are there any that aren't so important? Again, organizational culture might play a part, and again, different people come to work for different reasons, so have a think about that. So over to you then. Based on that, and again, I've just a couple of suggestions about things that you could talk about here, but what techniques does your organization use to motivate teams to be high performing? How effective do you perceive these techniques to be? What's your perspective? And as I said, because it's analyzed, we can't just describe the techniques. We do need to kind of get into a little bit and talk about the effect, the impact of these techniques, and what you think about that. Thank you. Okay, that's it. That is the end, the last assessment criteria for assignment 502, possibly the last one for your qualification. So if that's the case, very well done. Thank you for sticking with it and for watching quite a few hours of little YouTube videos. Anyway, hope that's been helpful. And yeah, all that is left for me to say is very good luck, and I hope you get a pass first time. Thank you very much indeed.